Right, so welcome to Mindful News. This is the first edition, so I'm pretty excited. The aim was always to get something that I can collect the main stories from the week that sparked my interest on the subject of mindfulness, because it's something that I'm quite passionate about now. And I thought I could put it together in a nice simple form, maybe give my thoughts on it and then see how it goes. I was inspired by the Russell Brand Truths News. I love the way that I get his perspective, whether it's once a week or every couple of weeks. But with so much media that's available to us, what do we follow? What do we pay attention to? And when you come across a subject that really inspires you, why not, pay a bit more attention on that and less of the perhaps more intrusive junk mail or junk images, junk videos that we get. And for the first event I wanted to cover, I thought it's quite fitting. It's Andy Puddicombe goes on to Jimmy Fallon. Now, Jimmy Fallon is that late night American talk show host. He does some excellent, dancing and rapping with, so many stars like Justin Timberlake. And he has a band called The Roots that back him up. And to have Andy, who is the founder of Headspace, I'm not sure if he's a Buddhist, but he traveled to study Buddhism and spent many years, I think maybe 10 years, practicing meditation. And so he's got this amazing app. And when you speak to someone about mindfulness or meditation and you talk about apps, Headspace is the one that people mention the most. It's a company valued at over £30 million I saw the other day, and it's just crazy to think that a mindfulness app could create so much interest and be so popular.
Bars right now, meditating. It's gonna be fantastic. What should I do? I sit next to you?
So live on TV, they're going to do a meditation with the audience, and who knows how many people at home followed this as well and joined in the meditation.
I would always encourage people who haven't done any meditation, sit comfortably on a chair. You don't need to sit cross-legged on the floor. Yeah. And whatever you do, don't try and stop your thoughts.
Don't stop your thoughts.
I think the classic mistake is to try and.
His voice is so familiar. For those that know the Headspace app. I just love how the whole audience is getting involved as well.
Nothing to check.
Because it's
taking a moment to pause.
It's a very strange thing to just sit quietly with your thoughts. We all close our eyes and we're all quiet, but with the mind wandering. But to be in silence, have someone guide you, and because of that guidance, remind you to keep paying the concentration. It starts to open up so many avenues of understanding how many thoughts we have, also how negative those thoughts can be, and also how rarely we spend time observing thoughts. And through the observation, that's really that powerful stuff comes. So even the Roots are getting involved. And they do say something, that there is something very nice about collective meditation where you're doing it in a group. There is science to show that there is additional benefits than just doing it on your own. All right, so there we go. Andy Puddicombe, founder of Headspace. If you're kind of a newbie in meditation, you're trying to figure out a bit more, Headspace is the way to go. And also this week, Altered Traits was released. Altered Traits is a book written by Daniel Goleman, the author of Emotional Intelligence. I was surprised how many people actually know of this book, and not only Daniel Goleman, but the concept of emotional intelligence, of which he coined. Especially within the last 20 years in business, how the importance of, emotional intelligence plays a huge role in successful businesses and also successful living. So much so that it has stood the test of time, and, New York Times bestseller, many years in a row consecutively, and to this day, world leaders, business leaders use this book. So to have Daniel then write a book alongside Richard Davidson, Richard Davidson, one of those top dog neuroscientists who spent a big portion of his career studying the brain and the effects on it of meditation. So to have these two masters come together to put a book, to write this book, Altered Traits, which in the UK is going to be known as, or is known as, the science of meditation, really is amazing. And it's one of those mindfulness books that could be made into a movie. We were fortunate enough this week to have Daniel Goleman join us on the podcast. As far as my podcast guests are concerned, this is truly, an incredible honor and a privilege to have someone who's basically one of the leading figures in mindfulness and neuroscience, the brain science, come on the podcast and give a breakdown, talk about some of the misconceptions. You know, I'm gonna actually check out this clip. It's me talking about, I always thought that when you meditate, the bad stuff in the brain shrinks and the good stuff in the brain expands. It's a myth. Of course, there's so many great things that happens, but here, check this out. And another point that you mentioned in your book, and it's something that I'm guilty of as well, it's when I try and explain mindfulness to people, I talk about how the brain changes shape. And then I refer to the amygdala and I say, yeah, you do 8 weeks of meditation, the amygdala shrinks and the amygdala is responsible for the negative stuff. And, you know, and for a long time, I thought that I was accurately representing what actually happened. So could you perhaps explain, you know, at a high level, you know, what happens to the brain when we meditate, and, you know, what are some of the misconceptions there?
Yeah. So what you said was a classic piece of neuromythology, and it's quite widespread,
Yes.
particularly as people are kind of hyping the science about mindfulness and meditation. It isn't to say nothing happens. Quite a bit does happen. It's just that not everything claimed, particularly by people who are popularizing these methods, actually does seem to happen from a scientific point of view. So some of the benefits of mindfulness right at the beginning are quite surprising, actually. One of them is sharpening attention. And the neural substrate, the neural basis of that is not yet known, but we know from cognitive science measures that mindfulness does help people pay attention better. For example, if you're a multitasker, you know, you're concentrating on this thing you're writing or this email or this project, and then you think, oh, I better check my email, my Facebook, my Instagram, whatever. And then, you know, minutes later, maybe an hour later, who knows, you go back to that project after so-called multitasking.
Yeah.
Multitasking itself is a neuromythology.
Yes.
The brain doesn't do simultaneous things. It switches rapidly.
Yeah.
So when you go back to that first thing you're highly concentrated on, your concentration is much, much worse. And it takes a while to ramp up. Unless, and this is very interesting, unless you've done mindfulness.
Yeah.
Mindfulness seems to buffer the loss of concentration from multitasking. And so it enhances the ability to focus.
If you're in New York on October 3rd, both Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson are going to be talking about the mindfulness movement. They'll be doing that alongside the incredible Jon Kabat-Zinn. And if you're into mindfulness, you absolutely know who Jon is. You know, his MBSR programs are world renowned. And anyone that's kind of teaching mindfulness or studied it, you know, knows of his work. So the three of them will be together. It's on October the 3rd at the New York Society for Ethical Culture. So you can find that in the links below. More on that. But like, you know, to really, what an honor to have Daniel, Richard and Jon together give a talk. You know, that can't be missed. All right, so this is going to be a weekly thing. I really want to put forward the most pressing stories in mindfulness, and you know, it will evolve and adapt, and I want to hear comments and feedback, and you know, I want people to flag me when there are, you know, important talks happening, or you know, when a paper is released and new findings are found, because I think there's so much science now, there's so much research, there's so many articles, there's so many documentaries, news reports on it. You know, let's sift through the not so useful, and let's dig down into what really matters. So if you're watching this on Facebook, you know, give me a follow, and if you're watching it on YouTube, then you know, hit the subscribe button if you like the content that you see, because it will really, you know, give me a gauge as to, you know, who's watching. And you know, I really want to develop this into a community of like-minded people who are, you know, interested in what's going on in the world mindfully.